The rain pelted against the cemetery's black umbrellas like bullets, but Scarlett Montgomery couldn't feel anything except the weight of the manila envelope in her trembling hands. "I'm afraid the terms are non-negotiable, Miss Montgomery," said Lawrence Winters, her father's attorney, his voice barely audible over the downpour. "Your father's company assets, your family home, everything, they all transfer to Sterling Enterprises if you refuse." Scarlett stared at the rain-speckled contract. Her parents' bodies weren't even in the ground yet, and already vultures were circling. "This can't be legal. I never agreed to marry anyone. Your father signed this agreement 10 years ago. Mr. Sterling has merely been patient." The lawyer's eyes shifted uncomfortably. "He's given you until tomorrow to decide." Scarlett looked across the cemetery where a tall figure stood motionless under a black umbrella, watching her from a distance. Thorne Sterling, the financial predator who had haunted whispered conversations between her parents for years. Now she understood why. "And if I refuse?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Everything your parents built will be liquidated to cover your father's debts. The foundation that supports your community will dissolve. The scholarships, the medical funding, all of it, gone." The rain intensified as the last mourners dispersed, leaving Scarlett alone with an impossible choice. She crumpled against her parents' shared headstone. The contract clutched against her chest. 3 hours later, Scarlett found herself in Winter's downtown office, facing the man who now controlled her fate. Thorne Sterling didn't look like a monster. That was the problem. With his aristocratic features and penetrating gray eyes, he looked like he'd stepped from the pages of a modern fairy tale. But the coldness in those eyes as he appraised her made Scarlett's skin crawl. "I won't sign this," Scarlett said, sliding the contract across the polished conference table. Sterling didn't even look at it. "Your father received a $15 million bailout when Montgomery Technologies was on the brink of collapse. Did you think that came without conditions? I was 12 years old when that happened. How could I possibly? Your ignorance isn't my concern." Sterling checked his watch. "Your father agreed that if the debt couldn't be repaid, you would marry me to secure a merger of our family's assets and intellectual property. That's barbaric. People don't arrange marriages like medieval nobility. In certain circles, Miss Montgomery, they absolutely do." His voice remained level, as if they were discussing the weather. "Your father negotiated terms most would consider generous. You'll maintain your own suite of rooms. Your financial needs will be met. You'll have access to resources most people only dream of. In exchange for what? Being your prisoner?" A muscle twitched in Sterling's jaw. "In exchange for being my wife in name and public appearance. The Montgomery patents will be preserved under the Sterling umbrella instead of being dismantled and sold to the highest bidders." Scarlett felt trapped. Her community in Montana depended on her family's foundation. The patents her father had developed provided medical technology to thousands. "How do I know you'll honor that part of the deal?" For the first time, Sterling's expression changed, something like offense flickering across his features. "Whatever else you may believe about me, I don't break contracts." Scarlett reached across the table, an old habit when trying to determine truth from lies. Her fingertips brushed Sterling's hand before he could pull away. No alarm bells rang in her mind. No tingling sensation that usually accompanied a lie. That was unexpected. Sterling yanked his hand back, his eyes narrowing. "Do we have an agreement?" Scarlett thought of her parents, of the small Montana community that would be devastated if the foundation collapsed, of her father's life's work scattered to corporate vultures. "2 conditions," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "First, the Montgomery Foundation continues its work, fully funded. Second, I finish college before any marriage takes place." Sterling's mouth curved into what might have been a smile on another man. On him, it looked predatory. "1 semester to complete your degree. The foundation continues with oversight. You move into Sterling Estate immediately as my fiancée." He slid a pen toward her. "Those are my terms." Scarlett hesitated, her hand hovering over the document that would change her life forever. In that moment, she knew she was trading her freedom for security, not just her own, but for hundreds of others. "Do we have a deal, Miss Montgomery?" With a single signature, Scarlett sealed her fate. She didn't notice the strange look in Sterling's eyes as she signed away her freedom, something that might have been regret, or perhaps something far more dangerous. The iron gates of Sterling Estate parted with mechanical precision as the black SUV approached. Scarlett pressed her forehead against the cool window, taking in the sprawling Connecticut property for the first time. Old money. Real money. The kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself, but was evident in every manicured hedge and gleaming window. "We're here, Miss Montgomery," the driver announced, his voice devoid of warmth. Scarlett hadn't expected a welcome party, but the absence of Thorne himself spoke volumes. 3 weeks had passed since she'd signed the contract. 3 weeks of finishing her final semester online, of liquidating her parents' Montana home, of saying goodbye to everything familiar. A stern-faced woman in her 50s greeted Scarlett at the entrance. "I'm Mrs. Harrington, the estate manager. Mr. Sterling is in London until tomorrow. I'll show you to your quarters." The mansion's interior was a study in austere elegance. All clean lines, muted colors, and intimidating artwork. No family photos. No personal touches. It felt more like a museum than a home. "Your suite is in the East Wing," Mrs. Harrington explained as they climbed a sweeping staircase. "Mr. Sterling occupies the West Wing. The central areas are shared spaces, though Mr. Sterling rarely uses them except for business functions." Scarlett nodded, trying to memorize the layout. "Are there other staff members I should know about?" "The household employs 27 people, including security. You'll meet them as needed." The woman's tone made it clear further questions weren't welcome. Her suite turned out to be a luxurious prison: bedroom, bathroom, sitting room, and small study, all elegantly appointed in shades of cream and pale blue. A laptop and tablet sat on the desk, still in their packaging. "Dinner is served at 7 in the small dining room. Mr. Sterling left this for you." Mrs. Harrington handed over a sealed envelope before departing with military efficiency. Scarlett broke the seal and unfolded the thick stationery. "Miss Montgomery, welcome to Sterling Estate. Your access card is enclosed. It will grant you entry to approved areas of the property. A few expectations. 1. You will not enter my private wing without explicit invitation. 2. You will inform security of any plans to leave the estate. 3. You will not speak to the press under any circumstances. 4. You will begin working with Ms. Reed on appropriate public deportment next week. Your classes conclude in 3 weeks. We will announce our engagement immediately thereafter. T.S. No welcome. No pleasantries. Just rules and commands." Scarlett crumpled the paper, then smoothed it out again, noticing a handwritten postscript she'd missed. "P.S. The red door at the end of the north corridor is also off-limits. Always." Scarlett's curiosity immediately flared. She spent the afternoon unpacking her meager belongings, Montana casual clashing with Connecticut opulence. The closet was already half filled with new clothes in her size, tags still attached. Designer names she'd only seen in magazines. Another subtle reminder that she didn't belong. At dinner, she ate alone in a room designed for intimate gatherings of 12. The silence was deafening. "Is it always this quiet?" she asked the server who brought her dessert. The young woman glanced nervously toward the door before responding. "Mr. Sterling prefers it this way, miss." By morning, Scarlett had mapped every accessible inch of her new gilded cage. The grounds were extensive, with gardens and a pool area that would have been paradise if not for the security cameras tracking her every move. She was standing at the edge of the property's small lake when a deep voice startled her. "I see you found my favorite spot." Thorne Sterling stood a few paces away, impeccably dressed despite having presumably just returned from overseas. Up close, without the emotional fog of grief, Scarlett could see the hard lines of exhaustion etched around his eyes. "I was told you'd be back tomorrow," she said, crossing her arms defensively. "Plans change." His gaze swept over her, as if conducting an inventory. "I see the clothes fit. I have my own clothes. Not suitable for your new position." He gestured toward the mansion. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. Scarlett fell into step beside him, acutely aware of how he maintained precise distance between them. "Your final classes end soon. We'll announce our engagement at the Sterling Foundation Gala. It's an annual charity event that draws considerable attention." "A public spectacle, you mean?" His jaw tightened. "A strategic appearance. The story is that we met through your father's connection to Sterling Enterprises, maintained a private relationship during your studies, and decided to marry after your parents' tragic accident." "That's a lie. That's business." His tone left no room for argument. The Montgomery patents integrated with Sterling technology create a valuable portfolio. Our union needs to appear genuine. They reached the terrace, where a staff member waited with a portfolio. Sterling took it without acknowledgement of the man's presence. These are the interview talking points for any press encounters. Memorize them. He handed her the folder. Ms. Reed will work with you daily until you're prepared. And if I refuse to play along? Sterling's expression didn't change, but the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Then you'll find that contract has very specific penalties. I don't make idle threats, Miss Montgomery. Scarlett, she corrected. If we're supposedly in love, you should use my name. Something unexpected flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, at being challenged. Very well, Scarlett. The way he said her name sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. One last thing, he added, turning to leave. Stay away from the red door. Some boundaries exist for your protection, not mine. 2 weeks into her stay at Sterling Estate, Scarlett had developed a routine. Mornings with Ms. Reed, a former pageant coach with a permanent smile and steel in her voice, learning how to be the perfect corporate wife. Afternoons completing her final classes online. Evenings exploring the mansion's permitted areas while Thorne locked himself in his study. Tonight was different. The mansion hummed with preparation for a dinner hosting Sterling Enterprises executives. Scarlett's first public appearance as Thorne's fiancée. Remember, minimal personal details, Ms. Reed reminded as she adjusted Scarlett's emerald cocktail dress. Deflect questions about your parents with gratitude for condolences, then redirect. Scarlett nodded mechanically. She'd been coached on everything from her posture to her plate etiquette. Nothing left to chance. And whatever happens, don't contradict Mr. Sterling. The warning seemed unnecessary. Thorne had barely spoken 10 sentences to her in 2 weeks. Downstairs, the first guest had arrived. Thorne stood in the grand foyer, the perfect host, smiling, charming, unrecognizable from the cold man who shared the mansion with her. He spotted her on the stairs and extended his hand. There she is. Scarlett descended, hyper-aware of the evaluating gazes following her. When she reached him, Thorne's arm slipped around her waist, pulling her against him with practiced ease. Gentlemen, allow me to introduce my fiancée, Scarlett Montgomery. His touch burned through the thin fabric of her dress. This close, she could smell his cologne, something woodsy and expensive that made her dizzy. Or perhaps that was the performance they were about to give. The Montgomery girl, said an older man, eyeing her with undisguised curiosity. Your father was a brilliant man. Such a tragedy. Scarlett forced a smile. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Bradford Pierce. His handshake lingered uncomfortably. I was your father's colleague years ago, before Thorne here brought me into Sterling Enterprises. Small world, isn't it? Something in his smile made Scarlett instinctively touch his wrist, reaching for that familiar sensation that detected lies. Nothing happened, but Pierce withdrew his hand as if burned. Bradford is being modest, Thorne interjected smoothly. He's been my right hand for years. The true power behind the throne. Pierce laughed, but his eyes remained fixed on Scarlett. I'm surprised Harrison never mentioned our connection. My father kept his work life separate from family, she replied carefully. Did he now? Pierce's smile didn't reach his eyes. How interesting. Dinner was an elaborate affair with conversation that danced around business matters while probing Scarlett's background. Thorne played his role flawlessly, sharing fabricated stories of their courtship with such conviction that even Scarlett almost believed them. I knew from our first meeting, Thorne said, his fingers laced with hers on the table, thumb tracing circles on her skin. Harrison understood before we did. He used to joke that I'd better make an honest woman of his daughter someday. The executives chuckled appreciatively, while Scarlett maintained her smile through sheer force of will. The mention of her father in these lies felt like desecration. Excuse me, she murmured, slipping away to the powder room. In the hallway, she heard hushed voices from Thorne's study. The door had been left ajar. The Montgomery patents integration is accelerating, Pierce was saying. But the algorithm remains incomplete without the original encryption key. Harrison Montgomery took that to his grave. Another voice responded. The daughter knows nothing? Thorne is convinced she's clueless. The marriage secures the patents legally, but without that key. Scarlett froze. The encryption key? Her father had mentioned something similar during his final visit to Montana, something about protecting their life's work. The accident investigation is officially closed, Pierce continued. No loose ends. Accident, the other man questioned. There were rumors. Accidents happen in mountain roads. Pierce cut in sharply. Convenient timing for Sterling Enterprises, but accidents nonetheless. Footsteps approached the door. Scarlett ducked into an alcove as Pierce emerged, followed by a nervous-looking executive. They returned to the dining room, leaving Scarlett shaking. The dinner concluded with practiced smiles and firm handshakes. When the last guest departed, Thorne's demeanor changed instantly, the warmth vanishing like a light switched off. You did well, he said, loosening his tie. Though you seemed distracted after dinner. Scarlett watched him carefully. It's difficult hearing stories about my father that never happened. Necessary fiction. He poured himself a scotch. Pierce seemed particularly interested in you. He claimed to know my father. Many people claim many things. Thorne's expression revealed nothing. Did you believe him? The question caught her off guard. I don't know what to believe anymore. Something flashed in Thorne's eyes. Concern? Calculation? Before she could decide, his phone buzzed. He checked it, his posture stiffening. We have a problem, he said, heading toward his study. The security system in the East Wing has been triggered. The East Wing? But that's not your rooms. Thorne's face had gone hard as granite. The red door. They rushed upstairs to find Mrs. Harrington standing outside the infamous red door, which now stood slightly ajar. The older woman looked uncharacteristically flustered. I heard the alarm and came to check. Someone has tampered with the lock. Thorne dismissed her with a curt nod before turning to Scarlett. Wait here. But, wait. Here. Each word dropped like a stone. He disappeared through the door, leaving Scarlett alone in the dimly lit corridor. Minutes passed. Her curiosity battled with caution. Finally, caution lost. She pushed the door open wider and stepped into darkness. Motion sensors triggered soft lighting, revealing not a room but a command center. Screens covered one wall, showing security feeds from locations she didn't recognize. Another wall displayed newspaper clippings, photographs, and documents connected by red string. At the center was a picture of her parents. And herself, from years ago. Surveillance photos. Following her throughout college. I told you to wait outside. Thorne stood in a doorway she hadn't noticed, his expression thunderous. You've been watching me? For years. Her voice shook with rage and confusion. It's not what you think. Then what is it? She gestured wildly at the evidence wall. Because it looks like obsession. Or stalking. Thorne moved toward the main computer. You shouldn't be here. No, I shouldn't be here. In this house, in this arrangement, in this lie. She grabbed his arm, desperate for answers. The contact was electric. Her gift surged unexpectedly, flooding her with impressions, fear, determination, and something deeper, more complex. Not lies, but not complete truth either. Thorne jerked away, eyes wide with something that looked remarkably like vulnerability. What did you just do? Before she could answer, alarms blared throughout the mansion. Security breach, a computerized voice announced. West perimeter compromised. The security breach turned out to be a false alarm, a deer triggering the perimeter sensors, but it gave Thorne the perfect excuse to hustle Scarlett out of the Red Room without further explanation. In the days that followed, he avoided her entirely, leaving for New York on urgent business. Scarlett used his absence to finish her final exams, officially completing her business degree with honors. No one was there to celebrate with her. The achievement felt hollow in the emptiness of Sterling Estate. She tried accessing the Red Room again, only to find the security upgraded and the door firmly sealed. Whatever secrets Thorne was keeping, he'd made sure they stayed hidden. 3 days into Thorne's absence, Mrs. Harrington appeared at Scarlett's door. Mr. Sterling requests your presence in New York for an important business function. The jet is being prepared. 2 hours later, Scarlett found herself flying over the Connecticut countryside in Thorne's private plane, a garment bag containing an evening gown her only companion. The Sterling Enterprises tower dominated the Manhattan skyline, gleaming silver against the darker buildings surrounding it. Scarlett was escorted directly to the executive suite on the top floor, where Thorne stood at the window, silhouetted against the city lights. I wasn't given much choice about coming, she said by way of greeting. Thorne turned, his expression unreadable. The Sterling Biotech Initiative launches tonight. As my fiancé, your presence is expected. Is that all I am? A prop for your corporate image. Something flashed in his eyes. Tonight, yes. The Montgomery name carries weight in biotech circles. It's beneficial to showcase our partnership. Partnership? Scarlett laughed without humor. Is that what we're calling this arrangement now? Would you prefer contractual obligation? His tone was clipped. Your father's voice recognition software integrating with Sterling's medical interfaces could revolutionize patient care. That's the bigger picture here. A picture that apparently includes investigating my parents' accident and monitoring me for years, she countered. When do I get an explanation for what I saw in that room? The muscle in Thorne's jaw tightened. Not now. Then when? When I determine it's safe. He checked his watch. Your dress is in the adjoining room. We leave in 30 minutes. The ballroom of the Sinclair Hotel buzzed with New York's elite. Scarlett recognized faces from business magazines and television, titans of industry mingling with celebrities and politicians. At the center of it all stood Thorne, commanding attention with effortless authority. Sterling's latest acquisition is more than decorative, I see, murmured a woman beside Scarlett at the bar. Helena Winters. I run digital security for Apex Innovations. Scarlett Montgomery. I know who you are. Everyone does. Helena sipped her champagne. The question is whether you know what you've gotten yourself into. Before Scarlett could respond, Bradford Pierce appeared, smoothly inserting himself between them. Ms. Montgomery, Thorne is looking for you. Helena's expression cooled. Bradford, still cleaning up Thorne's messes. Still failing to breach our firewalls, Helena? Pierce countered with a thin smile. He guided Scarlett away with a firm hand on her back. I'd avoid Winters if I were you. Industrial espionage is her specialty. She seemed to know something about me. Everyone thinks they know something about the woman who captured Thorne Sterling. Pierce's smile didn't reach his eyes. They're all wrong, of course. He deposited her at Thorne's side as the presentations began. Thorne's arm slipped around her waist, a practiced gesture that still sent unwelcome heat through her body. Everything all right? He murmured against her ear. Helena Winters cornered me at the bar. Thorne's body tensed. What did she say? Nothing specific. Pierce interrupted. Stay close tonight. Thorne ordered, his hold tightening slightly. The presentations showcased the integration of Montgomery voice recognition software with Sterling's medical interfaces, allowing patients with limited mobility to control their environment and communicate through voice alone. Despite herself, Scarlett felt a surge of pride seeing her father's work realized. During the demonstration, a child in a wheelchair was brought on stage. 8-year-old Jamie, recovering from a spinal injury. Using the Sterling Montgomery interface, he controlled a robotic arm to pick up a glass of water, bringing applause from the audience. As the presentation concluded, chaos erupted near the stage. The mechanical arm malfunctioned, swinging wildly. Before security could react, Thorne vaulted onto the platform, shielding Jamie with his body as the robotic arm crashed down. The audience gasped collectively. Security swarmed the stage. Scarlett pushed through the crowd, heart pounding. Thorne was already rising, checking Jamie for injuries. The boy appeared shaken but unharmed. When Thorne turned, Scarlett saw blood seeping through his white shirt. It's nothing, he dismissed as she reached him, but his pallor suggested otherwise. Backstage became an impromptu emergency room as paramedics examined the gash across Thorne's shoulder. You need stitches, the paramedic insisted. Later. Check the equipment first, Thorne demanded. That wasn't a random malfunction. Scarlett watched as technicians dismantled the robotic arm. Something in Thorne's reaction didn't fit his ruthless businessman persona. The immediate protection of the child, the concern overriding self-preservation. You're bleeding through that temporary bandage, she said when they were momentarily alone. It can wait. No, it can't. She surprised herself with her firmness. The great Thorne Sterling collapsing from blood loss won't help anyone. A hint of amusement crossed his face. Concerned for my welfare, Miss Montgomery? Concerned for your shareholders, she countered. Let the medics do their job. Remarkably, he complied, allowing himself to be whisked to a private medical facility while Pierce managed the aftermath of the event. Hours later, Scarlett sat beside Thorne's hospital bed as a doctor completed 17 stitches across his shoulder. The equipment was sabotaged, Pierce reported from the doorway. Someone replaced a safety component with a compromised part. Winters? Thorne asked, wincing as the doctor applied the final bandage. No evidence, but her fingerprints are all over this. Pierce glanced at Scarlett. Figuratively speaking. After Pierce departed, an uncomfortable silence fell between them. Thorne looked different somehow, vulnerable in the hospital gown. The masks of power and control temporarily slipped. "Why did you do it?" Scarlett finally asked. "Do what?" "Jump in front of that arm. You could have been killed." Thorne's eyes met hers, startlingly direct. "The child would have been. I didn't think the welfare of others factored into your decision-making." His laugh was short and harsh. "No, you wouldn't." He adjusted his position, grimacing. "Contrary to popular belief, I'm not completely heartless. Just mostly." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. As necessary. Against her better judgment, Scarlett reached for his hand, her gift activating with the touch. The sensation was different this time. Flashes of genuine concern, layers of calculation, and beneath it all, a deep, pervasive fear she couldn't quite identify. Thorne didn't pull away. "What do you feel when you do that?" The question caught her off guard. "You know about my ability?" "I know a great deal about you, Scarlett." His voice had softened. "More than you might wish. That's why you've been avoiding my touch." Among other reasons. His eyes held hers. "Your gift makes you uniquely dangerous to someone in my position." "Someone with secrets," she clarified. "Everyone has secrets." He glanced at their still joined hands. "The question is which ones are kept to protect yourself, and which to protect others." Before she could press further, Pierce returned with discharge papers and news that would upend their fragile moment of understanding. "The Sterling Estate security system has been breached," he announced. "Someone's been in the Red Room." The return to Sterling Estate happened in tense silence. Thorne, still pale from blood loss but refusing further medical attention, spent the helicopter ride in hushed conversation with security personnel. Scarlett caught fragments, perimeter breach, encrypted files, Protocol 7, none providing clarity on what exactly had been compromised. Sterling Estate loomed dark against the night sky as they landed on the private helipad. Security teams swarmed the grounds, their flashlight beams cutting through the darkness like searchlights. "You'll stay in the secure wing tonight," Thorne instructed as they entered through a side entrance she'd never noticed before. "I'm not hiding while someone breaks into my home," Scarlett replied, surprising herself with both the defiance and her reference to the estate as home. Thorne's eyebrows rose slightly. "This isn't up for negotiation. Neither is my involvement. Those surveillance photos in the Red Room included me. My parents. This concerns me directly." His jaw tightened, but the argument was interrupted by Mrs. Harrington, her usual composure noticeably frayed. "Mr. Sterling, security confirms the intruder accessed only the East Wing. The safe room was untouched. What about the encryption key? Still secure." Something like relief crossed Thorne's face. He nodded dismissal to Mrs. Harrington before turning back to Scarlett. "Fine. You want involvement? Follow me." He led her through a maze of corridors to his private study, a room she'd never been permitted to enter. Unlike the austere modernism of the main house, this space was all rich woods and worn leather, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a massive desk facing windows overlooking the lake. Thorne went straight to a painting on the wall, a stark mountain landscape that seemed out of place among the expensive abstracts elsewhere in the house. He swung it aside, revealing a biometric safe. "If you want answers, you'll get them," he said, pressing his palm to the scanner. "But understand that once I open this door, there's no going back." The safe clicked open. Inside lay a single USB drive and a worn leather journal with the initials HM embossed on the cover. Harrison Montgomery. Her father. "Is that?" Scarlett's voice caught. "Your father's research journal. He gave it to me 3 days before he died." Thorne placed the items on the desk between them. He knew he was in danger. In danger from what? Who? Thorne gestured to the leather chair opposite his desk. "Sit. This will take time." He powered up a laptop, inserting the USB drive. A password prompt appeared, and he typed a long string of characters from memory. Project Lazarus began 15 years ago, a collaboration between Montgomery Technologies and Sterling Enterprises. He began, turning the screen so she could see a series of documents. "Your father developed an algorithm that could potentially revolutionize medical neural interfaces. The voice recognition software? That was the commercial application. The full scope was much more ambitious. direct neural interface technology allowing paralyzed patients to control prosthetics with thought alone. Thorne's voice took on a rare quality, something approaching reverence. Harrison was a visionary. He saw possibilities no one else could imagine. And you saw profit. Scarlett couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Initially, yes. Thorne didn't deny it. I was different then. Younger. More ruthless. As opposed to now. His lips tightened. Your father changed my perspective. He insisted the technology remain accessible to everyone, not just those who could afford it. We argued constantly. So what happened? 7 years ago, we discovered someone was attempting to steal the research. Industrial espionage is common, but this was different. State-level resources targeting specific components of the algorithm. Scarlett leaned forward. The encryption key Pierce mentioned. Thorne's eyes narrowed. You've been eavesdropping. I've been paying attention. There's a difference. The ghost of a smile touched his lips before vanishing. Yes, the encryption key. Your father split the algorithm into components, hiding the key portion in an unexpected place. He opened the journal, revealing pages of handwritten equations and diagrams. The commercial applications continued, but the core research went underground. Your father insisted on protecting you from any connection to the project. Protecting me? Why? Because 2 researchers had already died in accidents. Thorne's voice hardened. Harrison believed someone inside Sterling Enterprises was compromised. The implication hung heavy between them. You thought it was my father. Briefly, Thorne met her gaze without flinching, until evidence pointed elsewhere. By then, relations between us had deteriorated. Is that when you started watching me? I started monitoring your safety, yes. He touched the screen, bringing up surveillance images. Not out of obsession, but protection. If someone was targeting research team members, the daughter of the lead scientist would be a potential leverage point. Scarlett tried to process this information against years of assumptions. Why not tell me? Why the charade of this arrangement? Because we still don't know who's behind the attacks. Thorne leaned forward, his intensity palpable. After your parents' accident, I launched a private investigation. The results were inconclusive. You think their deaths weren't accidental. It wasn't a question, but Thorne answered anyway. I know they weren't. He stood abruptly, moving to a cabinet and returning with 2 glasses and a decanter. He poured amber liquid into both, sliding one toward her. 3 months ago, there was another attempt to access the secured research. The same day, your father's storage facility in Montana was broken into. Thorne took a measured sip from his glass. Nothing was taken because what they wanted wasn't there. And what did they want? The encryption key, your father's most closely guarded secret. Thorne's eyes never left hers. He hid it where no one would think to look. Understanding dawned slowly, then crashed over Scarlett like a wave. Me? He hid it with me. Thorne nodded once. The night before he died, Harrison called me. Said he'd taken precautions, created a contingency plan. I didn't understand until I received a sealed letter after his death. He reached into the desk drawer, removing an envelope with broken seals. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably her father's. Scarlett took it with trembling fingers, reading the short message inside. Thorne, if you're reading this, my fears were justified. Protect Scarlett at all costs. She carries what they seek, though she doesn't know it. The contract we discussed years ago provides legal framework. Use it if necessary. The key exists in the only place they won't look, hidden in plain sight. S.M.G.23.11. Only she can access it. Trust no one, not even those closest to you. Harrison Scarlett looked up, confusion and anger warring within her. This contract, our arrangement, was my father's idea? The original contract was a legitimate business agreement with a marriage clause I never intended to enforce. Thorne's expression was carefully neutral. After his death, I received intelligence that someone was watching you. The contract provided the most expedient way to bring you under protection. So this whole farce was the most efficient way to fulfill my promise to your father. Thorne's voice softened fractionally. I'm not proud of the methods, but they were effective. And the encryption key? What does S.M.G.23.11 mean? I was hoping you might know. Scarlett stared at the letters. My initials, obviously. G could be my mother's maiden name, Gardner. The numbers could be coordinates or a date, Thorne suggested. Scarlett traced the letters with her finger, memory stirring. Wait, SMG. Scarlett Montgomery Gardner. She looked up suddenly. The date, November 23rd. My birthday. What happened on your 23rd birthday? I didn't turn 23 until last year. Realization struck like lightning. My graduation gift. Dad gave me a necklace with a crystal pendant for my 23rd birthday. Said it was a Montgomery tradition. Where is it now? In my jewelry box. I never wear it because it's too. She paused. Too heavy for a crystal. They moved with purpose to her suite. The jewelry box sat on her dresser, untouched since her arrival. The pendant rested inside, a clear crystal on a platinum chain, unremarkable except for its unusual weight. Thorne examined it carefully. It's not crystal. It's lab-grown diamond. Perfect for data storage. My father put the encryption key in my birthday gift. Disbelief colored her voice. Hidden in plain sight, Thorne murmured, turning the pendant in his fingers. The question is how to access it. Scarlett reached for the necklace, her fingers brushing thorns in the exchange. The contact triggered her gift, but instead of reading Thorne, she felt something else, a resonance from the pendant itself, like recognition. I think I know, she whispered, closing her hand around the stone. My father always said I had a special touch. The diamond warmed against her palm, then emitted a soft blue glow between her fingers. The pendant's glow cast eerie shadows across Scarlett's face as the diamond responded to her touch. Thorne watched with unconcealed amazement as microscopic fractures within the stone aligned to form a complex pattern. Biometric recognition, he murmured, calibrated to your specific bioelectric field. My gift, Scarlett realized. He knew about it all along. The pendant projected a holographic display, a three-dimensional matrix of code that hovered between them like a ghostly constellation. The encryption key, Thorne breathed. Harrison, you brilliant bastard. He reached for his phone, then hesitated, eyes meeting Scarlett's. We need to secure this immediately, but I'm not certain who can be trusted. What about Pierce? He's your right hand. Something shifted in Thorne's expression. Pierce has been acting unusually since your arrival. Until we understand exactly what we're dealing with, we keep this between us. Thorne photographed the holographic matrix with his personal device, then showed Scarlett how to deactivate the pendant. The glow faded, leaving the diamond looking ordinary once more. Wear it, he instructed. Don't take it off. If Harrison was right, it's coded to you alone. Scarlett fastened the chain around her neck, the pendant heavy against her skin. Now what? Now we determine who's been hunting this technology. Thorne's jaw set in a hard line. And why they killed your parents to get it. Dawn found them in Thorne's private study, surrounded by files and digital records. Scarlett had insisted on full disclosure, and surprisingly, Thorne complied, granting her access to years of surveillance and investigation. The sabotage at the New York event, Scarlett said, studying reports on the mechanical arm malfunction. You immediately suspected Helena Winters. Apex Innovations has tried to acquire our neural interface technology for years. Thorne rubbed his tired eyes. But their methods have never been this aggressive. What about this? She held up a security report. The night my parents died, someone accessed Sterling Enterprises' servers using Pierce's credentials. Pierce was with me in Tokyo that night. Thorne frowned. His credentials must have been compromised. Scarlett wasn't convinced. Convenient timing. You suspect Bradford? Thorne looked genuinely surprised. He's been with me for 15 years. My godfather was his mentor. Your godfather? This was new information. Elias Pierce. Bradford's uncle. Thorne's expression darkened. He practically raised me after my parents died. Heart attack took him 7 years ago. 7 years. The same timeline when the research theft attempts began. Scarlett filed this connection away. We need access to Pierce's communications, she decided. If he's involved, there will be evidence. Thorne hesitated, loyalty warring with suspicion. That would require his private encryption keys. Only 2 people have that level of access. You and Alara, he said quietly. My late wife. The name hung in the air between them. Scarlett had seen it in news archives. Alara Sterling, Thorne's wife of 3 years, dead from an apparent suicide 5 years ago. I'm sorry, she offered inadequately. Don't be. Our marriage was. He paused, searching for words. Complicated. But she was brilliant with security systems. Did she work on Project Lazarus too? No. Alara handled corporate security, not research and development. His tone shifted, becoming more businesslike. We need to access the Sterling Enterprises mainframe directly. That means going to New York. They arrived at Sterling Tower under the pretense of Scarlett touring her future workplace. Pierce met them in the lobby, his usual polished smile firmly in place. Showing the bride-to-be her kingdom, he asked Thorne. Scarlett wants to understand the business she's marrying into, Thorne replied smoothly. We'll start with R&D, then work our way up. Actually, Scarlett interjected, I'm particularly interested in security protocols. Given recent events, I want to understand how we're protected. Pierce's smile flickered momentarily. Security? Not the most glamorous introduction to Sterling Enterprises. I believe in understanding foundations before admiring penthouses, she countered, watching his reaction. I'll arrange an overview with the security team this afternoon, Pierce conceded. For now, Thorne, the Tokyo investors are waiting in conference room A. I wasn't aware of a Tokyo meeting, Thorne said, his casual tone belied by the tension Scarlett felt in his arm beneath her hand. Last-minute arrangement. They insisted on seeing you personally. Pierce checked his watch. They're on a tight schedule. Join us for lunch after, Bradford, Scarlett suggested. I'd love to hear more about your history with my father. Something calculated passed through Pierce's eyes. Unfortunately, I have prior commitments. Another time, perhaps. As Pierce walked away, Thorne bent to whisper in her ear. That was bold. His reaction tells us everything, she murmured back. There are no Tokyo investors, are there? None scheduled. Thorne's expression remained pleasant for any observers. He's separating us. Go to the meeting. I'll proceed with our plan. Thorne squeezed her hand, genuine concern in his eyes. Be careful. If he suspects, he'll see exactly what I want him to see. Scarlett adjusted Thorne's tie in a gesture that would appear affectionate to onlookers. Trust me. Alone, Scarlett made her way to the executive floor, the access card Thorne had given her opening secured doorways. Her target, Alara Sterling's former office, now a secured archive room according to the building schematics Thorne had shown her. The biometric lock required Thorne's fingerprint, which he had programmed into a specialized overlay on Scarlett's own fingerprint, a security hack Alara herself had developed, according to Thorne. Inside, digital storage units lined the walls, each requiring specific access codes. Scarlett located the one labeled Yes Personal and entered the sequence Thorne had provided. The drive contained thousands of encrypted files. Scarlett plugged in the specialized device Thorne had given her, designed to search for specific encryption patterns associated with Pierce's security protocols. As the device worked, she browsed other files, curiosity overriding caution. One folder labeled TS Surveillance caught her attention. Inside were videos, dozens of them, showing Thorne in various locations. His office, his home, private conversations. Alara had been spying on her husband. One video file was dated 3 days before Alara's death. Scarlett hesitated, then played it. The footage showed Thorne's office. He sat at his desk while Alara paced before him. You can't seriously believe Harrison's accusations, Alara was saying. Bradford has been loyal for years. The evidence is compelling, Thorne's recorded voice replied. Financial transfers coinciding with research leaks. Security breaches under his credentials. Evidence can be manufactured. You're not thinking clearly because of your friendship with Harrison. This isn't about friendship. It's about protecting vital research. Alara stopped pacing, her expression hardening. And what about protecting family? Bradford is practically your brother, which makes this all the more difficult to accept. The video continued, showing Alara growing increasingly agitated while Thorne remained resolute. The final exchange chilled Scarlett's blood. If you pursue this, you'll destroy everything your godfather built, Alara warned. If the allegations are true, it's already been corrupted. Alara's laugh was cold. You have no idea what's really happening, Thorne. Harrison Montgomery isn't the saint you think he is. Ask him about Project Daedalus sometime. The video ended abruptly. Scarlett sat frozen, thoughts racing. Project Daedalus? Her father had never mentioned such a thing. The search device chimed, indicating it had found relevant files. Scarlett downloaded them quickly, then replaced everything as she'd found it. She was nearly back to the elevator when Pierce stepped out, blocking her path. Ms. Montgomery. Lost your tour guide. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Looking for the ladies' room, actually. She forced a laugh. This building is a maze. Indeed. Easy to get turned around. Pierce gestured toward a corridor. Allow me to escort you back to the main area. Thorne must be wondering where you've wandered off to. As they walked, Pierce maintained casual conversation. I understand congratulations are in order. Your graduation, I mean. Business degree, correct? Yes, though it feels somewhat redundant now. On the contrary, Sterling Enterprises values education. His tone shifted subtly. Harrison was particularly invested in continuing education. Always learning, always experimenting. They reached the executive lounge, where Pierce stopped, checking his watch. Thorne's meeting should be concluding soon. Would you care for coffee while you wait? Against her better judgment, Scarlett agreed. Alone with Pierce was exactly where she needed to be to confirm her suspicions. You mentioned knowing my father, she prompted once they were seated with coffee between them. Yet he never mentioned you. Harrison was selective about his associations. Pierce stirred his coffee precisely, particularly after your mother's difficulties. Scarlett tensed. What difficulties? Her mental health struggles. Surely you're aware. Pierce's expression was a masterclass in false sympathy. The paranoia, the accusations. My mother didn't have mental health issues. Of course. Forgive me. Pierce's smile turned predatory. Perhaps that was just the explanation Harrison preferred. Easier than admitting she discovered his affair with Alara Sterling. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Scarlett maintained her composure through sheer will. That's not true. No. Pierce removed a phone from his pocket, sliding it across the table. Evidence suggests otherwise. The screen showed a photo of her father with Alara, heads bent together over documents, his hand on her shoulder. Innocuous, but presented with Pierce's narrative, designed to create doubt. Research colleagues, Scarlett said dismissively, though unease curled in her stomach. More than that, Pierce took back the phone. Their collaboration extended beyond professional boundaries. Why do you think Thorne was so eager to enforce that contract after Harrison's death? Guilt is a powerful motivator. Before Scarlett could respond, the building's security alarms activated. Emergency lights flashed as announcements directed personnel to evacuation points. Pierce's phone buzzed with an alert. His face hardened as he read the message. It seems our time is cut short. He rose smoothly. A security breach in the server room. How unfortunate. Scarlett stood, suddenly aware of the danger in his measured movements. I should find Thorne. I'm afraid Thorne is rather occupied at the moment. Pierce's voice lost all pretense of warmth. Tell me, Scarlett, did he show you the pendant yet? Your birthday gift. Ice flooded her veins. She backed toward the door, hand instinctively covering the necklace beneath her blouse. Don't worry, Pierce continued, advancing slowly. I have no intention of harming you. Unlike your parents, you're far more valuable alive. Scarlett backed toward the exit as Pierce advanced. The evacuation alarm provided cover for the rising tension between them. How long have you known? She asked, buying time while scanning for escape routes. That you possess the encryption key? Since your arrival at Sterling Estate. Pierce's calm was more frightening than anger. Harrison was predictable in his sentimentality. Of course he'd entrust it to his daughter. The door behind Scarlett burst open. Thorne entered, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. Step away from her, Bradford. Pierce's laugh held genuine amusement. Perfect timing. I was just explaining to your fiancée how her father betrayed you with your wife. Save the manipulation tactics, Thorne replied. We found your offshore accounts. The technology sales to Meridian Defense. Merely preliminary negotiations, Pierce countered smoothly. The real value is in the complete neural interface, which requires the encryption key. He nodded toward Scarlett. Hanging around her neck, I believe. You killed my parents, Scarlett said, certainty hardening her voice. A regrettable necessity. Harrison discovered my arrangement with Meridian. Pierce shrugged. Your mother was simply collateral damage. Security personnel appeared at the far entrance, but rather than apprehending Pierce, they flanked him protectively. Corporate loyalty is expensive but effective, Pierce observed. Now, shall we discuss terms for the key's transfer? Or must we resort to less civilized methods? Thorne's hand found Scarlett's, squeezing once, a signal. His eyes flicked toward the service elevator behind them. The pendant won't activate for anyone but Scarlett, Thorne said. Even if you take it by force. Perhaps. But given sufficient motivation, she might cooperate. Pierce nodded to his security detail. Secure them both. Minimal damage to the girl. Chaos erupted as Thorne pulled Scarlett toward the service elevator, using a decorative table as a temporary barrier. They made it inside just as gunfire erupted, the doors closing on Pierce's furious face. "Are you hurt?" Thorne demanded, examining her as the elevator descended. "I'm fine. You're the one bleeding." She touched his temple gently. Disagreement with Pierce's false Tokyo investors. Thorne pressed the basement-level button. "We need to reach the gala venue. It's our only chance to expose Pierce publicly." The Sterling Foundation Gala? Today. Annual charity event. Every major player in the industry will attend. Thorne checked his watch, including government officials who'd be very interested in Pierce's dealings with Meridian. The elevator opened to the parking garage. They moved swiftly between vehicles, alert for pursuit. "Pierce has controlled company security for years," Thorne explained as they reached his car. "We need public exposure he can't contain." "With what evidence?" "He'll deny everything." Thorne's smile held grim satisfaction. "The files you recovered from Alara's office." She didn't trust Pierce either. She was gathering evidence against him. Then why did she defend him in that video? Appearances. She was playing both sides. Thorne navigated the car through back streets, avoiding main routes. Alara suspected Pierce was working with someone inside Meridian, but couldn't prove it. The night she confronted him with her suspicions, she allegedly committed suicide. "He killed her too," Scarlett realized. "I believe so. But without proof, I couldn't act." They reached the Sinclair Hotel through service entrances, using Thorne's override codes to bypass security. The ballroom was already filling with guests for the evening gala. "Here." Thorne handed her a data drive. "Connect this to the presentation system. It contains Alara's evidence against Pierce, including his connection to your parents' accident. What about you? I'll ensure Pierce attends. He won't miss an opportunity to maintain appearances." Scarlett grasped his arm. "He'll have security with him. Armed security. Trust me." Thorne's eyes held hers. "This ends tonight." As Thorne disappeared into the crowd, Scarlett made her way to the control room, her mind racing. The pendant felt impossibly heavy against her skin, a literal and figurative weight of her father's legacy. She found the audiovisual control center unattended, undoubtedly Pierce's doing, anticipating their plan. Quickly, she connected the drive to the system, setting it to activate when the main presentation began. The ballroom hummed with wealthy donors and corporate representatives when Scarlett re-entered. She spotted Thorne near the entrance, engaged in seemingly casual conversation with the governor. Pierce stood nearby, outwardly composed but watchful. Their eyes met across the room. Pierce's smile chilled her blood. He lifted his champagne glass in mocking salute before moving purposefully toward the stage. He was going to hijack the presentation. Scarlett rushed forward, but the crowd impeded her progress. By the time she reached the front, Pierce had already taken the microphone. "Distinguished guests, on behalf of Sterling Enterprises, welcome." His voice carried smoothly through the sound system. "Tonight marks a new beginning for our company." Thorne appeared at Scarlett's side, his expression tight. He's accelerating his timeline. He means to announce a merger with Meridian tonight. "But your evidence." "Will still play, but after his announcement, the damage will be done." On stage, Pierce continued his address. "Sterling Enterprises has always pushed boundaries of what's possible. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce our most ambitious partnership yet." Scarlett touched the pendant at her throat, an idea forming. "My father built fail-safes into everything he created." She stepped forward, mounting the stage stairs, the pendant warm against her skin. "If the encryption key is what Pierce wants," she whispered to Thorne, "let's give it to him." Pierce's announcement faltered as Scarlett walked confidently onto the stage. Confusion flickered across his face before his professional mask returned. The audience murmured, curious about the unexpected interruption. "Ladies and gentlemen," Scarlett said, taking a second microphone, "before Mr. Pierce continues, I'd like to share something special with you all." She removed the pendant from around her neck, holding it up for the crowd to see. Pierce's eyes locked on it, barely concealing his hunger. "This technology represents my father's life work," she continued. "Harrison Montgomery believed neural interfaces could transform lives. Mr. Pierce is eager to share this vision with Meridian Defense." Thorne moved to the stage's edge, his posture tense but trusting. He'd recognized her gambit. "What few people know," Scarlett said, addressing the audience directly. is that this pendant contains the final encryption key to the complete neural interface system. Pierce stepped forward, reaching for the pendant. Perhaps this demonstration can wait for... No, Scarlett interrupted firmly. Everyone should see exactly what Meridian is purchasing. She closed her fist around the diamond, activating it. The blue glow illuminated her hand as she connected it to the presentation system. The holographic matrix expanded, floating above the stage in dazzling complexity. Pierce's smile became strained. Impressive, but highly technical for tonight's audience. On the contrary, Thorne interjected, joining them on stage. I believe our guests will find it fascinating, especially the hidden data packets embedded in the code. On cue, the holographic display transformed, revealing documents, financial transfers, and recorded conversations. Pierce's name appeared repeatedly, connected to offshore accounts and Meridian defense. What is this? Demanded the governor from the front row. Evidence, Thorne answered, of industrial espionage, corporate sabotage, and conspiracy to murder. Security personnel moved toward the stage, but stopped, uncertain whose orders to follow. Pierce's composed facade cracked. This is absurd. Manufactured evidence from a desperate man losing control of his company. The encryption code doesn't lie, Scarlett countered. My father suspected someone would try to weaponize his research. He built this evidence archive into the encryption key itself. The hologram shifted again, displaying the accident report from her parents' deaths, alongside financial transfers to the mechanic who had serviced their car. Gasps rippled through the audience. Pierce's face hardened as he realized the trap. You have no idea what you're interfering with, he hissed, lunging for the pendant. Scarlett sidestepped, but Pierce grabbed her arm. The contact activated her gift unexpectedly. Images flooded her mind. Pierce arguing with her father, Pierce meeting with military officials, Pierce watching as Alara Sterling fell from her balcony. You killed them all, she whispered, loud enough for the nearby microphone to catch. My parents. Alara. The researchers. Necessary sacrifices, Pierce replied, voice low. Your father's technology and military applications could save American lives. By taking others? That's exactly what he was preventing. Federal agents moved through the crowd, responding to evidence Thorne had apparently submitted before the gala. As they approached the stage, Pierce made a final desperate move, pulling Scarlett toward him, a small pistol appearing in his hand. Nobody moves, he ordered, backing toward the exit. Miss Montgomery and I are leaving to discuss terms privately. Thorne stepped forward. It's over, Bradford. Look around you. Every exit is covered. Then I have nothing to lose. Pierce's finger tightened on the trigger. Scarlett reacted instinctively. Her hand closed around the pendant, channeling her gift through it. The diamond flared with blinding light, sending electrical feedback through the presentation system. Temporary disorientation gave Thorne the opening he needed, tackling Pierce as federal agents swarmed the stage. In the chaotic aftermath, Scarlett sat quietly in a service corridor, the pendant cool and dormant in her palm. Thorne found her there after giving his statement to authorities. Are you all right? He asked, genuine concern replacing his usual reserve. I saw him kill them. When I touched him, her voice was steady despite the horror of the memories. He pushed Alara from her balcony, watched her fall. Thorne sat beside her, unexpected vulnerability in his posture. I suspected, but couldn't prove it. Alara was investigating him independently, gathering evidence of his Meridian connection. She was trying to protect you. Despite everything, he acknowledged. Our marriage was failing, but she remained loyal to the company. They sat in companionable silence until federal agents finished clearing the building. Dawn broke as they finally left, the city awakening around them. 3 months later, the Sterling, Montana Research Center opened on Scarlett's family property. The mountain backdrop provided a serene setting for the continuation of Harrison Montgomery's legacy. Neural interfaces developed for medical applications, with ironclad protections against weaponization. Scarlett stood on the observation deck, watching as the first patients arrived for clinical trials. The pendant rested against her skin, reprogrammed to secure the research rather than just conceal it. Footsteps approached from behind. Thorne joined her at the railing, their shoulders barely touching. The board approved the restructuring, he reported. Sterling Montgomery Technologies is officially recognized as an equal partnership. My father would have appreciated the irony. Scarlett said with a small smile. Harrison always played the long game. Thorne turned to face her. The contract between us has been voided. You're free to leave, build your own life. And if I don't want to leave? Their eyes met. The pretense of their arrangement long since evaporated. Months of working together, rebuilding what Pierce had tried to destroy, had created something neither had anticipated. Then we start again, Thorne said, taking her hand. No contracts, no obligations, just us. Scarlett's gift activated with his touch, but she no longer needed it to recognize truth. It shone in his eyes, clear as the Montana sky above them. Just us, she agreed, sealing their new beginning with a kiss as genuine as the promise between them.